Hey everyone, welcome. We are so excited to be with you per usual. If we haven't met yet, I'm Amanda Davison. I'm your friend and host here at A Wife Like Me, and we have a new friend with us today, Kelly Needham. Welcome to A Wife Like Me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, we're excited because we're celebrating with you. You have a brand new book, which I cannot wait to talk about. It's called Purposefooled. If you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the beautiful
Mhm.
cover. The subtitle is get this. Like, I had to read this a few times because I was like, I need to talk with her.
Uh-huh.
The subtitle is Why Chasing Your Dreams, Finding Your Calling, and Reaching for Greatness Will Never Be Enough. And I'm like, okay, we need to chat. So I'm excited because I've read through the book, but I'm excited because what I just prayed before I hit record was that women would really be like, just find freedom, that they would be truly free. They would experience the freedom and the fullness and the abundant life that Jesus came for us to experience. And I think that's part of, I mean, this is needed. This message is needed. So I'm excited. But before we like dive into the book, why don't you just introduce yourself to us so that we know a little bit about who we're talking to?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Texas girl, grew up in Texas, and met Jesus in my bedroom as an awkward junior high kid. And I cracked open my Bible for who knows what reason as a junior higher on my own, unprompted. I don't even remember what I read. I just remember the experience of he's real. The Lord is real and he's speaking to me through this book. And I just couldn't get enough of the word and enough of the God behind the word from that moment. So I really do feel like that is what has shaped my life is a constant like, how do I get more of him? And along the way, then met a man in college, and we married at 20 years old. So I did not plan to be a young wife. If anything, I was like, I'm going to be the single woman who's like, we don't need marriage. With Jesus is enough. I'm going to be overseas, missionary, whatever. Anyway, I ended up getting married at 20, which to a man that I love, and traveled with him. He was a singer-songwriter. That was his career in the first 10 years of our marriage. And anyway, now 17 years later, we now have 5 kiddos, 3 biologically, 2 by adoption. And he's not, and we're in very different spaces in life. Somehow I'm writing books, a woman with a finance degree, and he's a pastor now at a church, not on the road. So yeah, that's a little bit of who I am and where we're at now.
So does your husband still do music?
He does. He's the worship and teaching pastor at our church. So if he's not preaching, he's still leading worship and still writes songs, but a lot of them are for our congregation. So he was working on a song
That's
yesterday.
cool. That is so cool. Wow. I wanna be musically gifted. I'm tone deaf. Like, I can't you do not wanna sit by me and try. I I'm always, like, in awe at people who are musically gifted. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
man. So that's really cool that he teaches and does worship.
Mhm.
That's really cool. Okay, so let's talk about your book.
Mm.
Okay, again, I wanna go back to the subtitle. Why chasing your dreams, finding your calling, and reaching for greatness will never be enough. So, is it wrong to chase our dreams? Because I think I'm just you just dive in.
Yes.
You just dive in, and we'll go wherever we might go.
That is the question. And that's the question that I'm kind of hoping people are dealing with as they read that and get them interested to dig in to the book. I don't actually think it's wrong to chase your dreams. The book doesn't say why chasing your dreams is wrong. Why reaching for greatness is inappropriate. It just says it won't be enough. Because I really think that at the end of the day, if you got everything you wanted, you achieved everything you wanted. You climbed the mountain you got to the top of the mountain you're trying to climb right now. You did it all. Like, write down your dream in a card and put it in an envelope and imagine that coming true. It's not enough. There's a lot of times we're taking these deep aches for transcendent meaning and purpose because we were made for that. And we're taking them and trying to get them through our own activities and doing and achieving. And that can't meet that need. That deep ache for transcendent meaning can only be met in a person. We were made in the very image of God to know him, to be known by him. And it's only in knowing him that that deep ache is met. I mean, that's really what the book of Ecclesiastes is. If you've read that book in the Bible, it's the author writing from the perspective of Solomon. It may have been Solomon, it may have been someone else writing from his kind of vantage point, but the point of the book is I achieved it all. I did it all. He did more. He is the most of everything, the wealthiest, the wisest, the most accomplished in every lane, everything. And he stands at the top of this mountain, every single one of us is trying to get to the top of, and says, there's nothing here. There's
Mhm.
nothing here. The great thing that's up here is the same thing I had at the bottom of the mountain, which was just God and people to do life with and good work to do. To put like we need good work, we need people to be around, we need a place to live. I had all those things at the bottom, I have them up here. That's really the good thing. And that's what people say in their deathbed, right? They don't say, I wish I would achieved more. I
Mhm.
wish I would enjoyed my life with God and just enjoyed where I was at more. That really is the glory we were made for. And so I think there's just a lot of danger in even some of the ways we Christianize what I think is a very cultural pursuit of meaning. I'm going to go achieve to find meaning. And we go, I'm going to achieve for Christ, and then my life will matter. I'm going to do great things for God. It's like, well, not everybody even has that ability to, quote, do great things for God. What if they're in cancer treatment centers? And what if they're have several disabilities they're facing? Or what if they're in another part of the world and just stuck in poverty and they don't have options? Are they prohibited from a life of deep meaning and purpose? I don't think so. But if we say purpose and meaning comes from achieving things or doing what we feel like we were uniquely called to do, then we've prohibited a whole group of people from even having access to that type of meaning. So I just think it's a faulty way to think. And that's really the heartbeat of the book, is to get people to wrestle with those ideas, not to stop chasing their dreams, but just to know, go for it. There's just nothing on the other side that you don't have here right now. Uh,
Mm.
it's the same here and the same there.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you know Amy Carroll, she's one of my mentors. She's amazing, but I remember her talking about, when our first book came out, or my first book came out, she said, like, I thought I would feel like that I've like arrived, like this is it. And then she's like, yeah, no, like you still have that. Like you still, it comes out, the book is birthed into the world, and you're still like, oh yeah, no, I still feel the same. Like I feel like not that it was bad, but she was just, understanding and like recognizing what we think is going to give us something, even once we get it, you know, isn't perhaps won't going to give us that, because if we're placing our hope, and I don't know about you, but a lot of that is idolization. I feel like even our marriage, our kids, even ministry, like we can idolize, like it's going to give me something. It's once I have XYZ, then XYZ, right?
Mhm. That's
I'll
right.
finally feel fulfilled. And so I love that you are diving into this, because it is important, and we do Christianize even good things, like as
Mhm.
though that is for everyone.
Mhm.
Because on the flip side of this message of what we're talking about, which if you've been with a wife like me for any amount of time, we talk about this a lot, which is obedience. Like if God is calling you to do something, well, you better do it. Like
Mhm.
because what I see a lot is that we hesitate, right? We second guess, we doubt, we wait, we don't. We're too afraid. We allow insecurities, and she'd be way better to keep us from obedience. And so on one hand, it's like if God is calling you to do something, sister friend, you better do it. Like you
Mhm.
better, because obedience is key, whatever that looks like. If it's
Mhm.
and that's the I think that's the discerning part of it. It's like what great, we're doing air quotes on YouTube if you're watching,
Right.
like great big things or whatever we think that is. Ministry is not behind a mic. Ministry is whatever it is in the moment, wherever your
Mhm.
2 feet are. It's saying hi to someone that you've never said hi to. It's how
Mhm.
the Holy Spirit leads you. That's ministry, and those are great big things. So,
Yeah.
I wanna talk about our purpose and our calling, and then how do
Mhm.
we know? Like, let's just dive in there, because I think let's remove all the Christianese from maybe what we have thought my purpose is, my calling is. How do I find it? How do I know what I've gotten, what that is? Like, let's just dive into that, because it's super important.
Mhm. Yes. So when we talk about the purpose of something, we're talking about its function, essentially. If you think about what's the purpose of my computer, right? There's many purposes, but what you're talking about is its function in your life. What's the purpose of my coffee cup? It's to hold hot liquid. That's perfect timing.
Mhm.
Coffee cup is to hold hot liquid so that I can drink it and not be burned. Or the purpose of a refrigerator is to keep your items cold. So what is our purpose? And anything that we ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this item? We're going to look at the one who made it to really find our answer for that. We're going to read the instruction manual if it's not apparent on first appearance. So when we look at the Bible, right, God made us. He is our creator. He, therefore, is the one who gets to dictate what our purpose is, what our function is. And I think you could answer this question in many ways, but I think at its simplest, basest form, this is a definition you can apply to every human being alive at every stage of life, from infancy to deathbed and everything in between, that we are made in the image of God. We exist for God. Our purpose, our function is a person. Now that feels very like hard to get our hands around, right? Because we're like, well, what in the world does that mean that I'm made for a person? What we want to know, we want to put a verb in that place. I'm made for blank. I want you to put a verb there. I'm made to write. I'm made to teach. I'm made to, whatever, direct, manage, be a mom, fill in the blank. But that's not what God gives us. He says in Isaiah 43, these are my people whom I made for myself. He will say also in that same chapter, I made them for my glory. You'll see, right, Genesis 1:27, that he made us in his image to just by our very existence and breathing to reflect him. And I think that's why when you look through Old and New Testament, when God is giving us directions, what is priority number one in your life? Every time, love me. Love me. Is your heart, do you have affections for me? Love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, strength. And as Christians, we're like, yeah, we nod our head to that. We don't give it any energy. Like, yeah, love God. Now love people. Let me go do ministry. Let me go do something for God. Let me do something for others. We want to do that. But he's saying, no, you exist for me. You are mine. And that can play out in many different ways. But I think that really, we have to settle that. And you may say this is semantics. And I think a lot of it is in the Christian space. But I think the language matters because it's what keeps us focused. My purpose is the person of God. And that means it's going to keep me from making ministry my God, because ministry as a God feels very godly. It feels very noble. You feel very close to God because you're talking to him a lot, but not because you want to sit with him, but because you want clarity so you can go do for him in the right way. And so, yeah, our purpose is a person. And I think that then when you get to the word of calling, if we look at it, it connects that way too. If you look at how the Bible talks about calling, it primarily, over 90% of the time, will use the word calling to talk about our salvation. And it will say we are called to a person. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, consider your calling, brethren. Not many of you are noble or wise or, just not many of you were anything, but God chose you so that Christ could become, he's talking about salvation. Or Peter will say, consider your calling and election, walk in a manner worthy of the calling. He's talking about the calling you have as a person, that God would tap you on your shoulder. He would pick you up from death to life and say, I'm calling you to me. Jesus looks at the disciples, says, follow me, not go do great things for me. Follow me, just be near me, walk with me. And of course he wants to use us. And of course he wants our lives to be extensions of his ministry in the world, and he will. But our function, our purpose, and our calling primarily is just him. We are fully at the disposal of our creator. And that means if he wants to quotes here, sideline us for a season through sickness or trial or suffering to meet with him in those spaces, we're at his disposal to go, yes, Lord, I'll be with you there. And if he wants to send us out into public ministry, yes, Lord, I'll go there too. I follow you. And whether it looks to the world like I'm doing great things or doing lame things, doesn't matter as long as I'm walking with him, because that's who I'm made for. My life will have meaning and purpose and will produce fruit. God just gets to decide on what that fruit is, how it appears, and if it's going to be my lifetime or the next. But he promises that type of life will be fruitful.
Mm, that's good. I'm just like sinking in that. So Yes. And then you
Fun.
might be watching or listening and you're like, "Wait, so what am I supposed to do?"
Yes.
You know what I
That's the
mean?
question, isn't it? We're so
Because
like, "Give me something to do."
yeah, so, like, if that's what you're saying, Kelly, if that's what God is saying, if that's what his word is saying, so then what does that look like? Or maybe a better question is like, how do I not how do okay, I have 2 questions. What does that look like for the woman who's like, "I don't get it. What does that look like in my everyday life?"
Yep.
And then but I also wanna talk and ask you, how can we tune into and remember what you're saying, essentially what God has already told us, but we've really messed up and what made complicated. But how do we stay tuned into that and not get diluted with the world's even well-intentioned message on our meaning and our purpose, right? Because like,
Yep.
okay, I hear this, but I'm gonna walk away from this YouTube video or this podcast and I'm gonna forget what we just said. And 2 minutes later, I'm gonna see a master course thing on
Mhm.
finding my purpose. And it's, whatever, right? I'm just
Mhm.
making
Yep.
something up. So how do we stay tuned into this? Because
Mhm.
there's so much vying for our attention to believe something else.
Totally. So those are 2 really important questions. What does it look like to walk this out in our everyday life? And then how do I, uh, just keep my mind sane, thinking clearly with all the messages of the world? And I think they really both start with the first same basic step, which is you have to fight to be quiet and meet with God, like, in an actually meaningful way. We are called to pray continually. So I do hope that as you're driving in the car and as people are taking kids to school or going to work, that you are conversing with God. But none of us, I mean, this is a podcast for wives, right? None of us would say that we feel connected to our husbands if we only talk to them as we were doing things. I'm going to the store. Hey, hon, it's like all of us are like, sit down with me, look me in the eye. We need to like share our hearts with each other. That's where we get to know each other, kind of get the heartbeat of like what's going on in your world and fight for that connection so that we can stay a team in every season of life. We have to do that with the Lord. And I think sometimes we just forget that God is a person. We tend to treat him by default like a system. We go to church and we do quiet time, check. We do Bible reading, check. We have other spiritual disciplines or things that we do. We serve at church. And then our life goes like this, that, blah, 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 whatever the fill in the blank. If anyone treated me that way, I would be so offended if it was like, Kelly, I called you on Monday because that's what I do. And then I sent you a letter on Friday. And therefore, you're supposed to show up for me on Wednesday. It's like,
Wait,
okay,
what?
yeah. What is this system you made about me? Like, I'm a human being. I have, you know, part of that is the unpredictable nature of two people meeting each other and sharing life together. And I think we just don't give God the same respect as a person sometimes. We just systemize him because it's simpler and easier. But he is a person. And I just have to remind myself all of the things that all of the relational skills that I have that I apply to my friendships, that I apply to my marriage or my kids, I have to apply those to God. Do I actually make time for him? Do I keep my appointments with him? Do I have appointments with him? If I can make space for a coffee date with a friend from church, then I sure better be able to make space for that type of time with God. And if I can't in an undistracted way where my phone is put away, then that's a problem. So I think the answer to both, I know it feels maybe like a tangent here, but I really think this is where this starts. We're made for him, which means we have to spend time with him. I think that primarily is done the way that saints have done it from the beginning in his word and in prayer, and ultimately in the end of that with community. Um, so we do that and we do it consistently. And in doing so, um, here's what I found in my own life when I've made that a priority, which is really hard to do when you have children and work and lives. I get it. But the steady drip of Bible in my life does things like this. It exposes me to people like a woman named Jehoshaphat in the Old Testament who stepped up and took care of her nephew because they were all being killed by this, her tyrant mom who's coming in. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But she does this basic, ordinary thing. It pulls her into hiddenness. She's caring for a child that's not her own for 6 years. And because of that, the line of David is not broken. And we can say Jesus really is the son of David. But like for 6 years, who is anyone listening who's raising boys? We're talking about raising a boy from like 1-year-old to 7 and keeping him hidden. It was like, okay, that's hard. And would have pulled her out of the spotlight into hiddenness. And it's like, okay, so reading my Bible is giving me friends, if that makes sense. People that I'm seeing them walk with God, step into needs that's costing them greatly. And I see down the road, generations down the road, oh, this is how God's using that. That's enabling me to then look up into my own day and assess it differently, not how the world does. What's the most important thing I'm doing today? I don't know. But I want to walk with him today. It's helping me see men like David in a different light who are saying, more than anything else, I just want to be with him. Like, this is a man after God's own heart. He was not interested in changing the world. You don't see it in any of his journals in this book of Psalms. He's just let me sit at the doorway of my God and I will be happy. And I think that's what God's after. John the Baptist, who has a huge, really thriving ministry, which was important. So this is not an anti-do big things. He was selected by God before he was born, huge, important ministry, and he's fine in that position. And then his ministry is in decline, and he's just as happy. Amen. He says, let it be, because I am at the disposal of the one I love. And this is what he needs from me right now, is to fade. Great. I got it. Give me that fade all day long. Let him increase. Let me decrease, as it should be. And it's just changing the narrative for me. And so it's both changing the narrative, and it's also just helping me see my very boring, normal day differently. That as I spend time with God and talk to him about God, all my friends seem like they're doing cool things. Like, I had sick kids a week and a half ago, and I had other things I wanted to get done. And I'm seeing my friends get those things done to prep for the school year starting. And you know what I'm doing? I'm washing sheets because they were just, everything is dirty. Everyone got it, the stomach bug. And it doesn't feel important, but it's that time with God that then I can look up and go, Lord, this is the race you set before me today. And you've told me to run it with my eyes on you. Would you help me do that today? And in some mysterious way I don't understand, he's going to make use of that work that no one saw in a way that I don't even have a category for. And I don't even know what that will be. But I can trust it's going to be good. And so all of this change in how we live, I think, has to start with fighting tooth and nail to just be still. And for me, that's look like throw the wash rag down. I'm just going to throw a few dishes in before I meet with Jesus. No, it never is that. It's I'm going to do the dishes and the laundry, and then I run out of time and the kids wake up. It's like, no, throw it down. I've thrown my phone across the room and sat myself on the floor of my living room to force myself to stop doing. Because it's so hard to stop doing, and to just say, Jesus, I don't even know how to talk to you today. My mind is just a carousel of thoughts on just repeat. I just have to start honestly where I'm at, which is what I do with a friend. A friend comes over, I don't put on a fake face. I just say, this is where I'm really at. And every time consistently, when I'll just make 15, 20, 30 minutes focus time with him, that is the thing. That's what I was made for. And everything gets recentered when I slow down. So I know it's a long answer, but I just think it has to start there for us.
I think in many ways we've replaced that intimacy with God that you're talking about with, obviously you already mentioned the checklist. But I think what I see oftentimes is in our church circles or spheres, it's even just like we've replaced intimacy with, if we are inviting people to our church, then we're doing enough, or we're doing the right thing, or that is what being a Christian is. So the intimacy, excuse me, like gets thrown out almost. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the focus. Intimacy with God is not what I hear churches reiterating time and time again. I hear them reiterating, which is not bad. Invite the people. It's, again, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Right.
do it. But it's interesting because as I hear you talk, I would say that I don't hear, and I listen to a lot of messages throughout the week. I'm always listening to different messages from different churches, and it's interesting because I really, yes, you'll hear a message here and there on intimacy, right? And like like what you're talking about, I think is that it's intimacy with God. It's loving
Mhm.
him, being loved by him,
Mhm.
being known by him.
Yes.
And then that filling, that infilling then leaks out of us. But
Mhm.
we can't leak if we're not being filled. And so like it's really hard to encourage our people, when I say our people, like congregations or just other friends or Christians, to do anything Christian when we aren't even filled with Christ. So it's
Mhm.
like, like
Yeah.
it's like my son just started football again. So it'd be like, hey, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but like, hey, everybody, just like put your pads on and your helmet, but like you have no idea what we're gonna do with that. Like you have
Right.
no idea of the game that we're actually playing. But just
Mhm.
put the stuff on and
Right.
you should be fine. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's like, but we're not even in the like I'm not even playing. I'm not even enjoying this. Like, but I have my pads on, you know?
Right.
I got my helmet on.
Mhm.
It's all good, right? You know? Do you
Right.
know what I'm saying? It's just fascinating.
Absolutely.
That came to mind as you were talking and
Right. Well,
interesting.
because we do know eventually a deep knowing of God should lead to doing. You see that also through the Old Testament, right? So this is not a anti
Yeah.
that. Paul will commend us in the end of First Corinthians to always be abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing our labor is not in vain. And Paul himself will say, I worked harder than any of them. And he is the one beating the drum of we were made for Christ, through whom and for whom all things exist, written by Paul. It's like he's telling us you exist for God. There's your purpose. But it should lead to doing. But I think that is the problem that we're trying to invite people into a kingdom we're not enjoying.
Mm,
We're trying to invite people to a person we don't know very deeply, and who doesn't give us joy. It's like, uh, it's when I'm knowing him and enjoying him and my friendship with God is tangible and real, which I think comes from being still with him consistently, the same way deep knowing comes from any relationship. Consistent time alone together is how intimacy is formed. When I'm doing that, now when I'm talking to my neighbor who doesn't know Jesus, I'm actually I'm enjoying him. I'm enjoying Jesus. So I'm like, I want you to know him too, because that's what we do. We share what we're enjoying. If you've been to this new restaurant, oh my gosh, it's amazing. When you enjoy something, you tell other people. But if we cut the enjoying Jesus part out to go tell people about him, it loses the very thing that makes our sharing, our evangelizing lovely. We evangelize a lot of things. Humans are evangelists, by default. And so it's fun for me to sometimes go, what have I been evangelizing this week? And sometimes it's a book I've been enjoying. Sometimes it is a new website or a ministry, or sometimes it's a restaurant or a movie, meaning, oh, I saw this great movie. You should see it too. I'm just commending a thing I enjoyed to somebody else and trying to get them to enjoy it too. That's all that Jesus is asking us to do about him. Enjoy me and go tell others about me. Come get them with you. Come on, let's go follow him together. But if you're not really following him, you're just maybe studious, you're learning facts, you're, learning how to put the pads on, so to speak, putting on the external gear. It's just, if it's going to feel hollow to you, and then it's not going to feel natural to invite anybody else into that anyway. And so I think to me, it gives me a lot of permission to go, I have to first deal with my relationship with God. I think anyone who would be listening to this going, yeah, I don't enjoy Jesus. I mean, I enjoy being a Christian and the things that come with that. But like when I think about sitting alone with him, that doesn't feel enjoyable. That feels boring. I would say you're really normal if you feel that way. So like that shouldn't surprise you. But if that's where you're at, or just feeling like there's tension in your relationship with God, that's priority number one. I think you
yeah.
really can push pause on other ministry if you have
Yes.
the means to, because Jesus said your greatest command is love me with all your heart, soul, and strength. Then you can love your neighbor as yourself. So like, don't skip command one. If anything, it helps me to go, I need to press pause on command two, my
Mm,
eagerness to serve and do for others if something's up with me and Jesus, because he said that will take a lot of energy. He didn't say love me and then love your neighbor with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He said love me with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. It's going to take work to do that. And that's the work that we've been called to do first and foremost. But I just don't talk to many Christians who are working that hard at that. Um,
mm,
we're just, I think, all giving ourselves permission to do really great things for God and cheering each other on. Go do great
Mhm.
things for God. And I want us to. I do, but it just has to start with that. Sometimes my question is, what's your time with him look like lately?
Yeah.
You know, how much time have you gotten alone with God this week? And has it been good? Or where's the tension in your relationship with him? What are you doing about that tension? How are
Yeah.
you trying to think through that, process that with him? Those are the questions I'm asking myself and fighting for in my own community, because that's just, it's the fountain of, that is the fountain of all things in the Christian life, and it's all going to spill out from there.
Mhm.
Jesus said in John 15, right, you abide in me and you will bear fruit.
Yep.
Apart from me, you can do nothing. So he's just saying it's all, just if you're connected with me, if you're staying close to me, you really don't have to worry about a fruitful life, a life that is going to have a lot of effectiveness in the world. You actually don't have to worry about it. You just
Yeah.
stay close to him. That's why his yoke is easy and his burden is light, because he doesn't actually tell us to concern ourselves with like how great of work we do. He just says, just follow me. It's simple. Just stay with me. Like I tell my kids in the parking lot when we're, crossing the street from the store, get behind me like little ducks. That's what I'll tell them. Like, just, I don't want any space because I need to know you're close to me. It's like, that's literally what Jesus is telling us. Just stay close to me. Just keep your heart near to me, and you don't have to worry about the rest. I will be faithful to tell you what to do, where to go, and I will use every ounce of all your time effectively. Even the time you're sitting still with me will produce fruit and results in ways you cannot fathom. Just sit with me. And that's the one thing we're like, "Ugh, I just want to do for you, Jesus." And you know how often that's in my journal? So I just want, if somebody's listening to this, I really want them to feel like seen, because that is all over the pages of my journal. Jesus, doing for you is more fun than being with you. And I want you to change my heart in that. Can you help me see differently? Because it's just more fun to do sometimes. It's harder to be. And
Mm.
that's why he told us, command number 1, just be with me and love me. That's how you stay healthy as a human.
I think we're spiritual. I've said this before. I think we're spiritually fat as Christians because we have so much information. Even
Mhm.
doing can be consuming. That was one
Mhm.
thing the Lord convicted me out of a few years ago, is that even though the things I was doing in my day, and again, doing in my day, right? But I I was still consuming so much content, information, music, even music, lyrics, like, I'm just consuming,
Yeah.
consuming, and it's not bad, but I think we have to consider that if we can't just be, like,
Mm.
if I'm consuming while I'm being, I don't
Right.
think I'm really being. Right?
Yes.
And
Right.
so I think it feels really good, and I'm right here with us all, but it feels really good to consume. And,
Yes.
um, I don't care if it's ice cream, I don't care if it's a good book, a great another book. It all feels so good because
Mhm.
we're consuming something more, and it makes us feel like we're doing
Mhm.
something good.
Yep.
But we're still not being with him. Sometimes I
Right.
wish Sunday mornings were like like not I'm trying to find a word, not a surprise, but sort of like, "Ha, gotcha." Like, we're actually not gonna teach. We're gonna be. Like,
Mm.
you're gonna come, you're gonna show up. I've mentioned this in the past at, like, staff meetings, and obviously they didn't do it, but I was like, "I think we should show up and just, like, literally be with God." And, like, everyone bring your Bible. And we're literally gonna, like, worship him just with presence, with our presence, and, like,
Mm.
just give him our hearts and, like, literally be with him together, but
Mm.
be with him and not do anything. Be with him, and I don't think this message is popular, you
No.
know? Even with just again, we're all so well-intentioned, but it's just
Mm.
not. Again, because it doesn't produce anything. It doesn't
Right.
produce action really necessarily. It could, like you say, right? Like, it could
Right.
be that an hour after you're with him, he's like, "Boom, I had
Mhm.
you with me this morning for this other person or
Right.
whatever, and I'm gonna give you a word for them," or blah, 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 or whatever, right?
Right.
Um, but not necessarily. And
Right.
so that's beautiful, and can we embrace that? I
Mhm.
think again, it's just, I hope it's challenging for all of us to consider and then embrace,
Mhm.
because you aren't going to hear this on maybe your Christian radio station, from the pulpit, from your friends, in the book you're reading or whatever, right? So this that you're hearing today, you can like re-listen and re-listen and get Kelly's book, keep
Mhm.
reading it, keep it by your bedside, like, because you're not going to get this. Which is so interesting.
Mhm.
It's fascinating. Anyway,
Yeah.
and if you are just joining us, we're talking about Kelly Needham's book, Purposefooled: Why Chasing Your Dreams, Finding Your Calling, and Reaching for Greatness Will Never Be Enough. Here's a question then. Why do we want extraordinary?
Mhm.
Why do we crave that?
Yeah. Which we do, and that's not a new thing. It's not because we have the technology, it's not because 'cause we're obsessed with fame. I think that's a human condition. I think my reason for that is look at the Tower of Babel. It's like Genesis 11, and we're like, we're humans like, we're gonna make a tower to reach to the heavens, so that we can be remembered. So we do long for it because I think it is a cheap and quick substitute for what we were made for, the transcendent meaning we were made for. Um, we were, like I said earlier, we're made for in the very image of God. I mean, we're talking about the God who like designs snowflakes. I mean, talk about like, you're from a northern state. It's like piles and piles of snow. But if you like look at the individual flakes and all of them, they're all different. Who is this God who cares like that? Who makes creatures in the depths of our oceans that no one sees but are fascinating and amazing? I mean, he is exploding in creativity and beauty and wonder. I mean, just we couldn't even scratch the surface. Even the New Testament writers are like, if we wrote everything Jesus did, we wouldn't have the books, couldn't even fill the whole world. We're talking about such an expansive, amazing person, the person of God, and we're made in his image. So it is right that we're like, I need more than just a life where I just survive.
Mhm.
I need something more than just I did the things and now I die. It's like, I'm made for more than that. So that deep ache, like, I was made for more than this. Yes, you were made for more than marriage. You're made for more than motherhood. You're made for more than the job you're working. You were made for more, fill in the blank, because nothing can really scratch that itch but God. So I think, but that, again, that requires us to, God will show up to people in still and quiet, right? Be still and know that I am God. Or just that we could give a lot of examples of that. And that's the one thing that it's such a faith move, right? The question is, when I quiet my life and sit with him, is he actually going to show up in a meaningful way? We want to feel the reality of that before we commit to the time, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
give me this assurance, God, that this moment that I sit with you is going to be awesome and big and cool, whatever. Then I'll sit with you. It's like, no, this is where faith comes in. It is a believing that he is that lovely and choosing to sit with him, even if the first 5 times you sit with him, it feels like boring. It's like, well, that's what the Bible call waiting on God, by the way. Those who wait on the Lord will never be ashamed, Psalm 25 says. So it's like I'm showing up at your door here today, God, in the privacy of my living room, because I believe that I was made for relationship with you, and I'm not leaving till you like meet with me. That's waiting on
Mhm.
God. And we're commended to do that. But again, that's costly. It requires faith. It requires patience. We want immediate, fast, now. And pursuing extraordinary things can give us some sense of transcendent meaning and purpose. And it's immediate, it's measurable, and we can do something. It's not boring. It's exhausting, and we run ourselves into the ground doing it. But, we can take a course on how to blow up our social media account, which I've taken courses to learn how to do social media better. I'm not trying to demonize that. I'm just saying, yeah, you go run the race and it gives you something to do. It feels cool, but it's a cheap thing. It's like I could make this wonderful feast of a meal tonight and I won't have any wonderful taste in my mouth for a couple hours. Or
Mhm.
I can pop open this bag of chips and I can have something salty and flavorful now. Yeah, I find an immediate fix to my craving for a good flavor. But if I will just wait and I will put in the work, I will have something better. Because at the end of the day, eating that whole bag of chips, I'm just going to feel gross. And those chips are going to start to lose their flavor. And then I'm going to be like, well, that was lame. I should have waited for the good meal. And God is the better meal. I think chasing extraordinary things, there's a place for the bag of chips, right? But it's like, I don't have I do social media, right? I wrote a book. I believe doing things like that matter, but that can't meet that need. I think that's why we chase it. It's just a cheap and immediate substitute for what we were really made for. And at the end of the day, I think what we're finding culturally, this is one reason for these things, not the whole reason, but we find people who are exhausted, who never seem to feel rested, who have trouble resting, like truly resting. We've just erased leisure from our lives. We don't enjoy a thing for its own sake. We can't even go on a vacation without, okay, now this is a new series of podcast content. It's like, not
Mm,
everything has to be effective. You can just
right.
enjoy it as a gift from God. So we're exhausted, we're not resting, we're anxious, we're worried, and we're just climbing and climbing and chasing things. And it doesn't speak well to the watching world for those of us who follow Jesus if we look exactly like they do and go,
Right.
come follow Jesus. It's better over here. It's like you're doing the same thing I'm doing, just with Jesus language. And you might not be like trying to start a Fortune 500 company, but you're trying to start a nonprofit that's going to change the world. So it's like, and you're just as harried and run down as I am. So now what? So yeah, the extraordinary has always tempted human beings, and it tempts all of us. And it's normal to feel that. But it's good for me to remind my heart. Yeah, like this book. I really believe in the message of this book. The truths in Purposefooled are not new truths. They're old, timeless things that I rely on every day. And so I do hope for people it can be that. But you know what? It might flop in the eyes of the publisher. Great. That's fine. It might do amazing. Okay. Like there's temptation, right, to think about what if it did amazing? It's like, yeah, that's even if I got that, it's like a bag of chips
Yeah.
compared to what I made for. Sure, it would taste really good. It'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Also, I can't live on that. That's
Yeah.
not what I was made for. The meat, the steak, and the great meal is Christ, and I have that now. If the book fails in the world's eyes, and I have it if the book does well. But again, I need that reminder every day. I forget every day. So,
Mm. Well, it begs the question, what is the extraordinary thing that
yeah.
we are searching for, right? Like,
Mhm.
why do we ache for the extraordinary? Because he is a person.
That's
And
right.
if we believe it is something else, we are going to chase that. It's like,
That's
if
right.
what if we actually chased the extraordinary one and trusted him, period? Like, what if,
Mhm.
like, trusted him with any kind of potential outcome or anything he
Yes.
asks us to produce at some point? What if, or not? Like,
Mhm.
if we just made him the one we're chasing, understood that is what I'm craving, the
Yeah,
extraordinary that I crave in my life, he has a name.
that's
And
right.
if I chase and just rest and be with him, I can trust that he is going to fill in the blank
Mhm.
if he even wants,
That's
right?
right.
It's a whole different like paradigm that
It
we
is.
can live by. And I agree with you. I see my friends who aren't following Jesus, who aren't, interested in him yet. And it should challenge us to, consider, what about my life does look different? Does
Mhm.
anything about my life look
Mhm.
different that they would look at and want to be a part of? Like,
Mhm.
what about my life and how I'm modeling my rhythms and my practices and my peace and my joy? What about that, or not, is
Mhm.
appealing to them? And, again, yeah, I think ministry specifically, we talked a little bit before I push record. I know you've been on staff at a church. Ministry is very, it can be, what's the word? Deceiving even? Like,
Yes.
not even being on staff at a church, anyone listening who volunteers on a Sunday morning in any capacity, on a Wednesday,
Mhm,
whatever, right? Like you sign up to bring a meal once a month or whatever that looks like any type of what we would think of as air quotes ministry,
mhm,
outward seen ministry, because that's what we think of when we think of that
mhm,
typically. That has its dangers too, like you were
mhm,
talking about. Like we can do all the right things, and I was here for sure when I started out in ministry. Because they were the right things, I thought I
mhm,
was doing a good thing, and
mhm,
that's dangerous,
mhm,
and because we can do all the things and
right,
not ever actually be with God. We can be doing all the things for all the people, but if we aren't loving Him, like you talked about at the beginning of this recording, like if we aren't with Him, if we aren't giving Him all our hearts, our attention, our affections,
mhm,
what does that matter?
mhm,
Does it matter? Like we should be actually challenged big time by that,
mhm,
and just He's calling us back. It's not any shame or condemnation there ever.
right,
It's like He's calling us back to Him, like, come to me, maybe discover for the first time what this is all actually about. Because again,
mhm,
I'm just gonna say, I think what we typically hear in our churches today, typically, not everywhere, but hey, you have placed your faith and trust in Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Yes, good, like, yes, the heavens are roaring and like we are praising and celebrating. Now, here's what you got to do. You got to
mhm,
sign up for the small group. You got to sign up to serve, uh, and invite other people to church.
mhm,
It's typically a to-do list, right?
mhm,
Or here's a group you could join too, but it's doing, doing, doing. And
mhm,
again, because you're probably going to learn great things and you're going to,
right,
you know, absolutely there's good to all of
right,
that. But it should challenge us to be like, huh, what
mhm,
if in the way we are, if anyone's on staff at church listening, like, what if that looked different, where we were emphasizing different things like
right,
identity and being, and what does
mhm,
it look like to actually enjoy who God is, and then like
right,
literally stay there.
yeah,
I mean, it's just it really like opens up all these other thoughts in my head of like, what are we doing?
right. Well, in some ways, all those things are things the church has done from the beginning, which is good, but I think it's really we have to, maybe not recreate the wheel as much as it is, where is the wheel going? Why? Why are we doing it? Um, why am I meeting with my small group? What is the purpose? Um, why am I at church? What are we doing? The reading of God's word, the teaching of God's word, this praising Him, the meeting in small groups, all of those things I think are meant to be means of grace for us, but to get us more of Jesus and to enjoy Him. That's really, what catechism is it that like the question number one, what am I made for? What is I don't remember the initial question, but it's to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. It's like enjoy, enjoy. There's enjoy in that. We were meant to enjoy Jesus, and we do that through those things. But sometimes those things become a means for us to get us or doing, like you said, it becomes a to-do list for to-do list sake. Now I'm a good Christian. Check, 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 check. So sometimes I think it just is, even if you're in a small group and you feel like, man, we don't really talk much about that. It might not mean quit the small group as much as it means now when you show up, you could just use my book or this podcast as an example. Like I would just listen to something that was so fascinating. Can I send it to you guys? Can I share this book with you? Like when we show up here, I don't hear any of us talking about how we're enjoying God and meeting with Him through the week. I would like to change that. And can
Mhm.
we use this group as like a running club to chase after Jesus better? Like, how are you
Mm.
chasing after Him this week? How are you trying to because it is hard work. It's a hard work of a different kind. We're not used to it. We do need friends in that journey. So some of it is, can I change the why behind those things? Why am I doing this? Can I even identify what my current why is? And what would it look like if I changed the end game of that? And use these things that are already in place in my local church context, but to get us all to a different goal.
Mm,
God did not we don't need to change the world. Jesus is already doing that, has done it. He never looked at his followers and said, "Go change the world." He just said, "Follow me and be with me and tell others." It's like, there you go. Are we doing that? Or do we feel the pressure to like, I think sometimes it's the making it big, trying to change the world is partly just that we wanna know what we're doing matters, so we wanna see it, and we might just have to give up that right. Go, I won't know how it matters. We see it the people in our Bible, they didn't have the vision we have. We can look at their lives and see how they mattered. They
yeah,
didn't know that in the time, most of 'em.
yeah,
Um, Abraham, father of many nations, dies with, like, no descendants by and large, right? It's very small family. It feels very like and even Hebrews 11 will say they died without having received what was promised. So, uh, they didn't see the fruit of their life.
mm,
Midwives in Egypt who didn't kill the baby boys, they didn't probably live to see Moses come back and set the people free because that was 80 years later. So, they're faithful to God. We look at their story and go, "Wow, look what happened, how the world was changed." They didn't know that.
yeah,
And we're not gonna know it either. And I think that's helped me to take the pressure off of, like, my life has to matter. I have to see a big splash for my life. It's like, if you stay close to Jesus, he promises that your life will be effective. It's just you
mm,
might not see the ripples in this generation. And I don't want, a cheap version of that either, to create some splash that doesn't actually leave effects. It's just showy and just flashy. I don't want that, you know? So, yeah, I think we do need to readjust kind of what is our end game as believers. What are we discipling people to? Are we discipling them to Jesus or to doing for Jesus? Because they're not the same. There's a lot of people who can do for Jesus and not know him. The
yeah,
Pharisees are a picture of that in the New Testament. They did a lot of spiritual work, and yet when confronted with the very person of Jesus, they didn't like him. So
yeah,
it's like, can I sit still with Jesus and enjoy that moment? And if I can't, then maybe there's some Phariseeism in me that's brewing. I gotta deal with that, you know? And
yeah,
again, I think that's all of us. That's not to be condemning. That's if you read this book, you'll see a lot of that in my own story. This has just been an unlearning for me as well. Um, and then a seeing redefining what true effectiveness means, trying to figure
yeah,
out how do my deep needs for doing great things. I think that's a legitimate human longing to be seen, to leave an impact, to have something unique to do with my life. I think those are good, healthy longings. How can those things be met in the person of Jesus and play out in my life? I think we just have to wrestle with those things with him. And on the other side of that is a life that really is effective and rested and full of joy in the person that you're made for. And that's what I think that's what we're made for, that's what we all want, and so I really do hope it is liberating and freeing for people as they're digging into those truths and wrestling with what that looks like, even if it's uncomfortable at first.
yes, and it's true. That is what the book leads us to and helps us see and understand. I think it's convicting. We can all busy ourselves. I think busyness. We've talked about this for so long, but busyness. I think the enemy uses to really distract us from His grace and His love and His
Mhm.
presence. And
Yeah.
so, like you say, that's uncomfortable to break. It's uncomfortable to break busy
Yeah.
and to say like, yeah, nope, I'm really pursuing a different lifestyle now. Like I'm not that anymore because I'm really going to learn maybe for the first time what it
Mhm.
looks like to really live with him.
Mhm.
Be with him. And so like I just encourage anyone who's like, "Oh, my land, I want that." Because I also know if you're listening, you're like, "Yep." Because the result of this kind of lifestyle is one of peace
Mhm.
and stillness and like a settling in our souls because we are with him. We are enjoying him like you're talking about.
Mhm.
And so I know we want that and it's possible, but it will require you to be uncomfortable and get uncomfortable and be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know I've been leading that thing or whatever he's asking you to do, whatever that transitions or adjustments are. just lean in and don't be afraid to do that. So,
Mm.
um, Purposefooled is Kelly's book that we've been talking about. Why chasing your dreams, finding your calling, and reaching for greatness will never be enough. Purposefooled is linked in the comments below. Same with Kelly. Make sure to grab the book. For you, this would be a great resource to grab your girlfriends, share it with your pastor, have, ask if you can do a small group, whatever, all the things. Or just invite some gals to even do it virtually and text through the chapters with each other or whatever. But it's so good. And just thank you for your obedience and writing and
Mm.
um, birthing the book God has birthed into the world. So thank you. Would you mind praying over the wives before we close out?
Yes, I would love that. God, I thank you for each set of ears listening to these words right now, that through technology, we can join our hearts together to you in prayer and come to you, the one we were made for. God, would you help each one of us to remember the truth? And would you give us grace to believe it, that we really were made for you, that there's nothing, nothing in this world that will satiate our deep hunger for a life that matters besides you. We weren't our husbands can never be enough for us. We already know that. Our jobs, the other vocational things in front of us will never be enough. And even if all our circumstances changed to be exactly how we wanted, it still wouldn't be enough because we were made for something so much bigger than that. So, God, I pray that each woman listening would feel a validation in her heart about just that deep ache for more that's there. That's not a bad longing. It's meant to lead her to you. And God, would you give each of us the faith to actually take that longing to you? We might not be able to see you with our eyes or hear you with our ears just yet, but that does not mean you're no less real and able to meet with us in a really meaningful, real and tangible way if we will commit ourselves to be still and wait on you. The same thing we want as women. We want to be pursued. We want to be chased down by our husbands. You want to be pursued, God. You want people to come knock at your door and wait on you. That's why your word says that those who wait on the Lord, that they will mount upon wings like eagles and soar, that those who wait on the Lord will never be ashamed. There's so many promises because you love people who wait on you, who pursue you, who knock at your door and say, I'm here till you open it. So you give each one of us the courage to do that today. Find a way to just quiet our hearts for 5 minutes, maybe, and bring our real selves to you and start that process of waiting on you, meeting with you. Help us, God, to do that because that's where the good life starts, is right there with you. And we need your help for swimming upstream in that type of living. So, Lord, give us grace today to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for being with us and taking time out of your day to share your heart with us. We appreciate you.
Yes. Thanks for letting me be a part and joining you today. It's been so great.
Yeah, and ladies, thank you. You know you are loved, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you need a Bible, simply reply, leave a comment, or email us at info@awifelikeme.com, and we will get you a Bible. Thank you for being with us. We will be back next week for an all